media question here.
Yes, I just want to ask about the sirens. It says the council at the moment is working on installing some sirens, tsunami ones. It also says, though, that the risk is very low, in fact, unchanged from the earthquakes. So were they sort of already in the pipeline, or are they as a result of the latest?
Yeah, they were already budgeted for. What we're looking at actually is how we could extend that system and add more in. But I think what we've heard is it's really only part of the solution for people. So if you have a locally generated tsunami, it's likely to be, as we've heard today, a relatively small event. The big danger for us are the major earthquakes that occur further out in the Pacific or as far away as South America, which is where we've had historical tsunamis before, and we get approximately 12 hours warning around those. So we are, however, committed to putting in a tsunami warning system because it's a peace of mind issue for a lot of our community as well. I don't know whether Murray Sinclair from City Council, Civil Defence, is there any more that we can add to that?
No, not a lot. You're right. We are working on it, but we've got the locations identified. There's something like about 47 sites between Waimari and Sumner. We will have to start installing those this financial year, but we'll probably get the whole lot in financial year.
Okay, so it was budgeted to take place in the financial year that we're currently in, so that work should be in the main underway and hopefully getting close to completion by the end of our financial year, which is at the end of June. So the staff are working on that process at the moment. The one thing I would say, and it was said before, is that we are in the city now, just about each and every one of us, sort of, backyard seismic experts. And what we are hearing is that if you get a significant period of shaking, like maybe 1, 2 or 3 minutes, that's an indication of an event somewhere which is bigger than, say, the 40 to 45 second shaking that we got from the 7.1 all the way back in September 2010. So if you are in an area and you're perhaps on the beach or you're very close or in a low-lying area and you experienced a shaking event that went on, should we say, 90 seconds, 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I think the earthquake in Japan, which was a 9, ran for how long, Kelvin?
Yeah, 3 to 4 minutes.
3 to 4 minutes. Then you are talking about an event which you won't know at that point where it is actually taking place, but an event which is capable of producing a reasonable wave. And you would take your own steps as a sensible citizen, having experienced that and with all of the knowledge we've got from 9,500 earthquakes, to consider what you would do. If it was me, I would be gathering up the grandkids and we would be definitely, without panic, moving steadily away from the waterfront or getting to higher land if I was around one of the hillside suburbs. So that's going to be more effective for you than any tsunami siren system that we can ever actually put in place, or a warning system. Having said that, we think that the warning system is important to our community and we think that we should put it in place. We think that it might have some other uses as well, so it is something that we are in the process of doing. Yes?
This is a question for you and perhaps for Sarah. After the September and February earthquakes, we had an assessment system as to where the safety of buildings, and we have had none since, independent system of inspection of buildings and to assessment of their safety. In terms of the public buildings of Christchurch, both owned by the council and owned privately, and for instance our infrastructure like the Morehouse Bridge, is there any intention of reassessing those buildings independently across the board in Christchurch in terms of their safety?
We are in the process after every significant event. Anything that comes along over a 5, we send our teams out immediately. We will shut our public facilities at that point, and they're not opened until they've been checked by an appropriate engineer. It's one of the first things that we do. Same with our bridges. Same
That's only
with
for
all
council
infrastructure. Say again?
That's only for council
Correct.
infrastructure.
And then when it
comes
comes...
public buildings as a whole.
Well, public buildings to me means the ones that we as a community own. Now, talking about private buildings, for sure, the message is very, very clear to all of the owners. For example, let's look at the malls. After each of the recent earthquakes, the malls were closed by their owners and inspections were carried out, and they were not open until the engineers had given an all clear on those buildings. So with privately owned buildings, the initial responsibility does rest with the owners in these circumstances to make sure that they are safe. And I would think that any shopper in Christchurch now, after 15 months of earthquakes, having seen the outcomes, would generally want to check on the web or somewhere before they went to the mall to see if it's open. So yes, there is a checking process. We are checking all publicly owned buildings, and the private property owners are responsible at that point for checking their buildings. Jane Parfitt, do you want to add anything to that?
So Sarah, with private buildings, we've had a systematic process of writing to building owners, asking them for their engineering assessments. That's been prioritised by size of building, age of building, and we've required those statements to come back to us. And in some cases, buildings as a result of those assessments have been closed. We're going to have a re-look at how that process goes following the quake on December the 23rd.
That's what I'm interested in, because if we're leaving private buildings to private owners, it doesn't necessarily guarantee the safety of the public.
So that process started off in June. We wrote to all those building owners. We've got a list from the biggest to smallest, most significant to least significant, oldest to youngest. We've run a process, and we'll rerun that process again. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so a similar process to Waimakariri, and I would imagine it's standardised throughout local government in terms of community-owned buildings, and the same process is applied.
Thank you for that response, Roger. In light of what's happened in December, and given what happened and some of the learnings from Boxing Day, I guess I'm quite concerned that private building owners are allowed to open, and we don't seem to have any quick process to either get an assessment or have them closed until the assessment is done. So what confidence can the public have when they walk down the street that some of the older buildings have been reassessed because there was no state of emergency and no public information on those buildings, whether they're safe to walk under, safe to go into? Is there any consideration being given to some sort of more urgent way of I guess, protecting the public in the short term in light of the scientific information we're hearing around the possibilities for ongoing earthquakes?
How old is the building, Scotty?
Sorry?
How old are buildings are you talking about?
I mean, just go down Madras Street, for example. There's buildings down there, I don't know, 60, 70 years, I'd say some of them.
Yeah. So, I'm suspecting those buildings, we required engineer certificates following the June quake. And the ones that were left were below a certain earthquake level. Can't remember what the number is off the top of my head. We required them not to be occupied and so on. So I should think where we've seen that they're on the margin, we'll get them re-inspected again. I guess the issue we've also heard today was the level of accelerations from this quake is lower than we've had from things like the June quake. So while they may have suffered further damage, we're just going to work through our process here.
Because people have been putting photos up of new tilt slab buildings in construction that have been, damaged quite significantly through these latest quakes.
Well, they may have suffered cracks. That doesn't mean they've been damaged in any structural sense, Yanni. If they're a modern building, there's a difference between a tilt slab building, which is full of lots of steel, and an old masonry type structure. But I think people have seen in the paper we were quite active in that process of making sure buildings that we judged to be dangerous were shut. And we got quite a lot of flack before Christmas for some Sumner buildings where we've simply gone through that process.
So I might just make a comment as well in relation to the University of Canterbury, and I think other schools and tertiary institutions in the region. Every time there's a magnitude 5 event or larger, basically the university closes, and there's a very thorough engineering checking process in place. In fact, the University of Canterbury ran that immediately over the Christmas period and post-Christmas. The checks involve a five-stage check. Sorry?
Okay, no, we're going to ask the experts. Mr. Berryman, what would you give that one?
3.8.
Well, 3.3. 3.3. Stephen?
Sold.
You're going to go with the boss, okay. Minister, what was that?
I'm very concerned because 3.3 is the parliamentary bar, so it's just open.
Yeah?
I didn't feel it because I was busy. But I can tell you it's come from the northeast and it's probably a 3.5. But I guess that just to finish my comments, we do a 5-point checking process after every significant event, and it's a pretty thorough one, and I think we can have a lot of confidence in the process.
And look, on that note, I've kept some of these people for a significantly larger amount of time than I'd asked them to provide for us, although that they have to get back to where they've come from, some of them. However, those who can stay a bit longer are going to wait up here at the front, and you might have another question you'd like to bring forward and introduce to them directly. But I want to thank you all for coming out. I think that the overall message that I would take away from today is that there is some good news. That was the first time that I'd heard that all of the energy that was apparently unaccounted for after the initial 7.1 earthquake has now been accounted for, and I think we would say that is good news. The rest of it is the reality of a city like Christchurch having undergone an incredible series of seismic events, effectively going through a recovery period. I'm hearing that the dangers, or if you like, the potentials for further earthquakes, even those around the 5 to the 6 mark, is more likely to be moving further out from the inhabited areas of the city. We hope continuously out into the Pacific Ocean and even further, and that the risk from those fault lines of a tsunami that would be of a life-threatening dimension is very small. We've also heard that you do need to remind your fellow citizens that if you are in the waterfront or in a waterfront area or on the beach and you do feel the ground move for a significant period of time, and we're talking at least 60, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, that should be seen as a warning that in a common sense and non-panicking way you should probably move away. And that would apply anywhere around New Zealand, because of course we don't know where that quake would have been released from initially. So it could be in the main divide, for example, in which cases the chances of a tsunami would be probably 0. But as a general rule, just be aware of your surroundings. And in a sense, that's what we've all become. And I think that heightened awareness has caused additional concerns for some of our citizens, and I hope that the information that has been brought forward today can give some reassurance that there is not a great big cache of hidden information that is not being revealed to you, and that there is some reason to believe that in terms of the central city area, the worst of those events directly under the city is behind us. It was reassuring to hear about the other fault that had been identified and somebody brought up running, I think, down Morehouse and out to the coast. That should have gone if it was likely to go, given that it's had a series of major energy releases around it, which tends to suggest that that is extinct in terms of the impact on all of us. So I want to thank all of our GNS people, the Tonkin and Taylor people, for joining us. Yarg from the University of Canterbury. Again, acknowledge the elected representatives here. Mr. Brownlee, Minister Brownlee, our earthquake minister, for joining us. Also other members of Parliament, and also especially those from the different emergency services who have done such a brilliant job on behalf of all of the people of Christchurch and Canterbury. And finally to our staff from the City Council as well. Thank you for all the work that you're all doing. Have a safe weekend, a safe afternoon. Thank you.